Hi everyone, it's good to be back on air after the mayhem of the elections. In the last 1 month, I kept pondering on how our leaders were raised and how they in turn are raising their children. And I've decided that I'm going to spend as much time as I can preaching the gospel of effective parenting. Note, I didn't say good parenting, I said effective, because good and bad is subjective. And with me to kick this off is Adeniyi, aka Ronkeposh. Adeniyi holds a BSc in biochemistry from Queen Mary University of London and a master's degree in business administration from the University of Hull in the UK. She's a certified Montessori directress with a postgraduate diploma in education. Ronke is the owner of Posh Pre and Primary School in Ikoyi, Lagos, and she also has a children's entertainment company called Posh Party Packs. Welcome, Ronke.
Good morning, Feran.
I'm so happy to have you here.
Likewise, thank you for
having me. And I love your
me.
hat.
Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. So let's get right in. Okay. Parenting for change. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
Well, I guess it's doing things differently. We want change. So what did they say? It's saying insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So if we want to have results that are different from what we currently have, then we have to parent effectively for change.
Okay, so how do we begin to do that?
Well, we can begin to do that by looking inwards first. First of all, you can't pour from an empty cup, they say. You have to know what you're made of. So who are you exactly as a parent? It is what you are that you're going to produce. Okay. You're not going to produce this amazing child when you have brought up a child with a certain set of values. So you yourself must ensure that you are doing things right. So even before you think about that child, even bringing the child into the world, you should be thinking about yourself. Are you up to task? Have you dealt with your scars, your trauma, your history, your past? Are you able to care for the child? Are you able to communicate, provide for the child? And provision is not only financial. You have to be present as well. Time is what is lacking in many families these days. So a lot of people may have money to send their children to school, give them good food, take them abroad, but they may not have the time to instill the values that the children need. So these are some of the things that you need to ensure that you are an effective parent.
So you see, a lot of the things you've talked about, it sounds like a no-brainer. Yeah. But I usually say parenting is one of the hardest things because there's no manual. Nobody has taught you how to be a good parent. So all of these things you're talking about, how do you know you're doing the right thing, you're not doing the right thing? Where you don't have a manual. Nobody, it's what you were trained, it's how you were trained that you'll train. So how do you get around all of that?
I think these days, when people tell me that there are no manuals, I tend to say that there are manuals. There are a lot of manuals. Okay. There's so much information out there these days that we can't hide under ignorance. We can't say, I got it wrong because I didn't have information. There is information. There's more than enough. We're drowning in a sea of information. There's good information out there. So it is there. We just have to ensure that we're following the right people. We're reading those books. We're going for those seminars. We're intentional. So you'd find that when you have a parenting forum, for example, I'm sure there are people that are already switched off because we're talking about parenting already. They would rather watch hip-hop something or how to make 100 million in 30 days. Yes. They'll probably prefer to watch that. Whereas the most important thing that you should be watching is this channel right now and listening, especially if you have children or intend to have children. This is what you should be listening to. But you find that people don't invest in this sort of things and they'll say there are no manuals. There are manuals. There's so many professionals all around the world doing and preaching this gospel of parenting.
Okay, so I hear you, but we're in Lagos, Nigeria. Yes. Some of these manuals are written by people that live in a different world. Their lives are different, their perspective is different. So why should I read a manual that somebody in Italy wrote?
Don't read it.
When I'm in Nigeria.
Don't read it. Read the manuals that Ronkeposh has written. Praise for has written, Taiwo Akilami has written. There are Nigerians that have written a lot. I know so many. There's a whole family life institute in Nigeria now that have practitioners for family life, for parenting, for marriage, for so many things. They've written books that are culturally adapted and will make sense to the Nigerian or the African. So read those books if you don't want to read the ones from abroad. They are available.
Fair enough. Okay, so what if because let me take it back to parenting for change. what if one of the people listening to me, their kids are already in their 20s, and they may have not necessarily been the most effective parents when their kids were growing up. Is there still room to change some of the mistakes that may have been made?
There may be change, but the impact might be small. So you still have to start with yourself. You have to have those conversations. Bear in mind that the 20-year-old is now an adult and can make decisions on their own. So you can't parent that same person as a 6-year-old. You have an adult here. So that child might have to reparent himself or herself. So there's something called reparenting.
Okay.
So that 20-year-old will have to do that with the support of the parents. Okay. If the parents have said, okay, I've gone wrong this week, and it's okay to ask and tell your children that I've gone wrong with X, Y, and Z. So I've paid, for example, people to help you with examinations. I've been fraudulent in many ways to support you, and this is not the way to go. So I'm admitting that, so ensure that as much as you can, start building a new path for yourself. So you can have those conversations with your children.
Those are hard conversations.
They are hard conversations to have, but they're not impossible conversations to have. If you really want that change, if you truly want that change, then there's room for it.
True. And are there tenets for good parenting? Although I use the word good loosely. Are there tenets for good parenting?
There are. I mean, I always like to start with self-awareness. So people have children. They have children. Why are you having children? If you ask them, I have a group that has thousands of parents there, a parenting group, and I've asked before, why did you have children? And I could hear a pin drop because a lot of people don't give it a thought. What happens is you go to secondary school, go to university, maybe you get a job and then you get married. That is it. But that's not why we should have children. Some people will say, oh, be fruitful and multiply. But that's not exactly what the Bible is saying. It's actually talking about other things. Be fruitful and multiply in every area of your life. So you should be a woman, you should be a man, that you must be wholesome in that way. It's optional to be a parent and it's optional to be a spouse to anybody. But you should be whole. So self-awareness is key. When you're aware of yourself and you're invested in yourself and you start to have children, then you have something to give that child. If it's just you empty, there's nothing to give the child. If you're not available and you're outsourcing your parenting to domestic workers, to drivers, to house girls, to all sorts of people that have different sets of values, all confusing the children, creating a monster in society, which is what we have a lot of them today, then you mess up that child. So self-awareness is key. You have to be present. You have to communicate effectively. You have to shower that child with love. You have to be there. I'm not saying spoiling the child. I'm saying shower the child with love. Understand the child's love language. Understand the child's personality type. You run your parenting like you run a business. When you have your business or you're working somewhere, you have the values. You understand it, you memorize it, you have the constitution, you have so many things. And you learn it, and you force people to learn it, and you preach it, and you have a logo, and you have all sorts of things about that business. The same should be replicated when you're raising children. What is it about my child? What is the perceptual code of my child? What is it about this child? What should I do when it comes to raising the child? When I'm looking for a school for my child, do I put a child in the school because everybody is putting their children in that big school, even though things are happening? No. You say, my child, which school deserves to have my child? Because you understand what your child needs. So does my child need a big school, a small school? What are the attributes of that school that will suit my child? So we must run that parenting like we would run a typical business that is working, that is functional.
Makes absolute sense.
Yeah, of course it does.
Makes absolute sense. But I'm going to take you back to something you said about leaving your child to domestic workers to help and all of that to help raise your child. We can't do it on our own now. So is there anything wrong with that?
Do you have to do it, is the question. If you don't have time, you don't have to have children. We need to start preaching that thing.
No, but are you saying that you can't have your help in your home assist with raising your child?
No. There is outsourcing and there is support. So someone can come into your house and help you clean your house, yeah? Someone can come into your house and help you maybe with the laundry of your baby because you're overwhelmed. There's a lot of work. And then you can have the child and the ownership belongs to the house help or the nanny or whatever the case may be. You find them, they're the ones that are going to school for PTAs, they're the one taking the children out to do the hair, they're the one sitting with the children, doing the homework, they're the one feeding the children. Mom goes out, dad goes out in the morning, even before the child wakes up. They come back with children are already awake. The parent is the domestic worker. Support is different to outsourcing completely. And this is what we have. Many schools have said, I don't want to see nannies come for PTA because they are the one taking ownership. They're the ones. In fact, you'd find that there was this thing on YouTube where, and this was even international, where they asked certain domestic workers certain qualities and characteristics about certain children, and they asked the parents. And the domestic workers got more answers than the parents. They don't know who the children are. They're just having it to tick the boxes in society to say, I have children. So you find that they are like a bragging right. I have 3 children, I have 4 children that you haven't parented, that are causing a nuisance in schools, in society. But you can go out there to say, oh yeah, I have 4 children. There's an issue.
There is an issue. There used to be a saying, I don't know if it's still applicable, spare the rod and spoil the child.
It's biblical.
Apply today.
It's biblical, it's in the Bible, but it's misunderstood. And it's a way where people parent in a lazy way. They would say, oh, foolishness is bound of the child. It's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. They will argue. I have a book called 101 Tips to curb the beating and the shouting. Not promoting the book, but to tell you the amount of research that I've done when it comes to that rod. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort. That's what the Bible says. But people pick that one out. Now, even in the book of Deuteronomy 18 to 21, it also says that a rebellious child should be stoned to death. But we don't stone our children to death. We want to beat them. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort. It's a rod of miracle, correction, discipline. That is what it is. So sparing the rod is for you to discipline your child effectively, not using a stick or a cane to constantly beat the child, to put the child to dehumanize the human, which is what we find in many homes.
I see.
Yes.
And where do our values and beliefs come into play in this?
Well, do people even know what their values are? Ask the typical child, what are your family values? Do they know what they are? Do parents know? Have they written it down anywhere? Have they communicated it out to their children? Even a 2-year-old can understand values in a very childlike way. You begin one at a time, telling them that, okay, we are Adeniyis in this house. Is this how an Adeniyi behaves? What are our values? Leadership, for example. You know, if it's something that is important to you. If excellence, so you tell the child, this thing that you've done, is it a value of our home? Is this excellent behavior? Do our children understand this thing? Have we taught them? Do we even know it? So there's a place for values. However, even as a nation, do we hold on to our values? Do we even know what our values are? So we must ensure that each family has their own value system and what and their own beliefs. So beliefs, up to you what you want to believe. But values are usually universal. There's some things that, moral values, for example, things that we do that are right. And we know that irrespective of your religion or your beliefs, it's right to treat others well, to be kind, to show empathy, all those sort of things. Very, very important.
Okay. This is interesting. It's because we just assume parenting, everybody can parent because they have a child. But to go back to what you said about treat it like an organization, would you then recommend that each home should have a constitutional, I don't know what it's called, the booklet with rules and regulations and these are our values and all of that? How would you? I
mean, you might not write a book, but it must be communicated in one way or the other. There's some people that when you come into their house, you see their family values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see that this is what we do in this house. When you come into my house, you don't wear your shoes. My house, you don't wear your shoes. So wherever you are, if you want to wear your shoes, we don't. Because we don't really do domestic workers in my house. So that is part of what we practice. When you eat, you go and wash your dishes. There's so many things. So if you hand over your child to, if my child comes over to your family or vice versa, how do you expect me to know what to do with your child? Because if you have this bottle of paracetamol, they will give you a manual, or a Ferrari car, they'll give you a manual. They will tell you exactly how you should use it. But you hand over a human being to somebody else, and you don't know what to do. They don't know what to do with that baby. I can remember at our school, we had a parent bring a baby in, and it just blew me away because she got it. When she brought the baby to our creche, she wrote out certain things. This is the time the baby sleeps on this side, does this, X, Y, and Z. Just really wrote everything nice and beautiful, and we pinned it up for. So anybody that comes and wants to deal with Zena, they know exactly, there are no questions to ask. And that is really how it should be. You should have a guide. The same way if you're going to another country, they will tell you, these are our rules and regulations. Before we give you the visa, if you know you cannot abide, don't come to our country. But we don't do all these things when it comes to parenting. We don't do anything like when it comes to family life. It's just so loose, we're so lackadaisical because we don't value it and we don't understand the power of our first nation, which is the family.
Sounds like something I said recently. Your first constitution is the home.
It is.
If you were to, you're in education, so if you were to change the curriculum, are there, I don't know, 3 to 5 things you would change from the current curriculum, and why would you do that?
I wouldn't change it. I will just tweak it.
Okay.
So remove some ignorant things that don't apply. There's some things that we're telling children, using the typewriter in business studies when you should be in history, for example. Little things like that. Understanding family. What is family? We live in the world where our children are ignorant of the realities of life. LGBTQ, all those things are happening. We might not accept it, we might not believe it, but they are happening. And ignorance is the predator's strength. The ignorance of your child is the strength of the predator. They don't understand it. A lot of Nigerian African children don't even understand that there are families that have 2 dads or 2 moms. It might not be in your Bible or Quran. It might not be acceptable, but it happens, it exists. And that's why when they go out there, they fall because they're not standing for anything. They don't understand. They go into a world and everything is like, what's going on? What is this? What is binary? What? They don't get it because there's so much ignorance. We've shielded them with our curriculum. We've overprotected them, teaching them things that are irrelevant to society. I would ensure that our curriculum, whatever the content, because the curriculum is an experience, it's not just the content. So we must ensure that there's a lot of communication happening, there's a lot of creativity, collaboration happening, and critical thinking. Our children are able to solve problems and make a difference in society. Our current curriculum is not allowing for a lot of that, all those shading, ABC, all those things are not the realities of life. The way we practice, the way we teach, they're not the realities of life. It's been said that education is pretty much the only thing that has not changed in many years. The phone has changed from what it was many years ago. The cars have changed from when we were riding horses to driverless cars these days. But our children are still sitting in the classroom and facing the board. Nothing is really changing per se. So if I'm going to change it, I'm going to change practices, I'm going to tweak it. Because the Nigerian curriculum, as much as people say is crap, it just needs to be tweaked. It's actually very healthy. It's a very good curriculum. It just needs to be tweaked, and we need to embrace some of the realities in society. That's what I'll do about the curriculum.
Thank you so much for that. So to bring it back home, parenting for change. Tell me 5 quick things that parents of young and old children can do to begin to build the leaders of tomorrow, to hopefully stop this menace we're going through of a really bad government and all of that.
Okay, so young and old, start with yourself. Start the change, model the change to the children. Let them see, because you can't tell them to do something that you're not doing. You're lying, you're fraudulent, you're doing all this type of things, and you're saying they shouldn't do it. So focus on yourself, that self-awareness. Raising children with discipline, resilience, those sort of children, that's what you need. Allowing for a place for discipline for your children in the home and outside the home. So all those parents that go and jack their teachers and try and fight the battles of the children. Children should be able to fight certain battles. You don't go to school and say, somebody pushed my child, another child pushed my child. It's silly. These things should be happening. We were playing with sand, studying snakes, climbing fences, doing so many things as children. Now, if it rains, the parents say, water poured on my child. No, we don't want those sort of things. So you are over-pampering the children, and you're raising children that do not have any grit and no capacity whatsoever. So we need to ensure that we are doing that as parents. We are present in the lives of the parents, of the children, even if your children are abroad, even if they are grown and they've left the home, you must be present. I have a grown child, a 17-year-old, and I'm in constant communication with, even just before here, she knows I'm on this set. We know what is happening, So constant communication, because if you have the heartbeat of your child, you will know when there are issues. They will be able to speak to you. And then the way that we parent, authoritarian kind of, dictatorship kind of, and then we're liberal. So we have 2 extremes. Do what I want you to do, and then next thing is like, you're the best thing since sliced bread. moral values, very, very important. And our faith, whatever your faith is, you must instill, because I believe that every faith, well, maybe just one, but I believe that every faith has a positive impact. They actually are solid. They have all these principles, all these tenets. Our children should be children of faith. Our children should have values and strong belief system. They should understand their roots, their culture, their values, their identity. The typical Nigerian child does not know what they are. They'll go to Singapore, they will speak Singapore. They'll go to UK, US, speak all sorts. Today their hair is this. They don't want to be African. They are bleaching. They are doing all. I can just go on. So those sort of things, we really need to face it.
Thank you so much, Ronke.
No
Thank
problem.
you. This has been quite intense and hopefully quite impactful. Yeah, because another 4 years, another 8 years, leaders. Yeah. So thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so grateful.
No problem.
That you were able to come. So hopefully we've learned a thing or two. And really, for me, it's really about tomorrow's leaders, and the future we want to see. So hopefully we learn one or two things. John, well, not John. John's not around right now. For me, who is our John for today, Helen and myself will be wrapping up the show very quickly. So please stay with us for a few more minutes. Thank you.